so I don't want to. But I've been going through and doing some of this stuff with boards, and I think a lot of the folks in this room have used OshPark before. And I kind of ran up against the limit of OshPark, and I thought maybe some other folks might find it interesting what I ended up doing. So the big thing is, well, why? I've been using OshPark for a while and made all sorts of boards. Why? And first, I blame Adam. We were talking at the end of last month's meeting, and he mentioned that they were going to do their production, or they were going to do their production for their board with seed, and that kind of planted a seed in my head, which got me thinking about
no pun intended.
Well, actually, I was going for the pun, but
guilty.
But I was kind of working at the same time. I was working on this board, and I came to the point where I realized I needed a big board, and when that needed the big board, and what Adam had mentioned before, I kind of put together, as well as the other thing, I've started to look at some of these different folks that can do assembly. Just trying to think ahead a couple steps. I'm nowhere near where they are in terms of wanting to build multiples of these things, but Pete and I have been spending a lot of time, and Gene, to hand assemble these boards that I've been making, and it's tough. So I think maybe next month I'll talk about that. Hopefully we'll have success in the PowerPad chip, because I've respun that board, but we'll get into that later. But what got me to this was this mess. I'm sure you guys can identify. You got these little breadboards sitting around, and you build little circuits on there, and some of the circuits are persistent, and they get on my nerves after a while. It's like, breadboard is great when you're doing something, you're going to work on it for a week or two, but when you've not touched that breadboard circuit because it's doing something useful and something that you have a recurring need for, then at some point you start to say, well, why do I still have it on the breadboard? So what I found was I was doing a lot of stuff. I've been working on refining the power supply for my board, using some annoying TI chips which are hard to reflow, but well, that's another story. And looking at linear versus switch power supplies and all this. And I built this thing to do a battery rundown test. And I had a very simple thing. It had a clock, because I want to keep track of how long it took for the batteries to run down. It had a voltage and current sensor, because I wanted to track the voltage and make those nice graphs, which I posted on the blog. You guys can see what the results of those power supply tests were. Had an Arduino that kind of called the shots, ran the show. It had to have some way of switching on and off the power using either, it started out to be a relay, and then I graduated to MOSFET. And then it had a little display, because I didn't want to tie up my laptop for days on end. Well, the battery was running down. I wanted to be able to run this thing without the laptop and be able at the end of it to say it took this many hours for the battery to run down. And then sometimes I'd plug that nifty little open log onto the end here so I could get the data points for those 2 days, and again, not tie up the PC. So that was the idea. And what I found is I started using that. I kept using those same components over and over for different things. And eventually I said, forget it. I'm just going to build a board that does this. And when I started thinking, well, if I'm going to build a board, why not have it do other things, like break out the SPI bus and break out the I2C bus and break out some analog ports and digital. And before they knew it, I started thinking about a general purpose kind of prototype and test board. And I came up with this idea. It had to have the room for the LCD to sit up there. It had a place where the Pro Mini, which is kind of my go-to little device for plugging things in, because you get them cheap. I thought, hey, why not an I2C port so I could program the bare chips when I assemble a new board. Here's a little place where I was going to test my power supplies. Here's where my voltage sensor and current sensor. Here's my real-time clock. And then before you know it, this thing started to get kind of complicated, and it turned out to be expensive. So I went to OshPark, and it's like 108 square centimeters. And OshPark said, hey, glad to give you the relief from tying up that proto board. All you need to give us is $58.30. And I was like, oh man, I didn't like that proto board being tied up in those components, but I don't think it's worth $58.30. So then that's when I started thinking about what Adam said. It just happened to be that we talked, and I said, well, let me take a look at seed. And I knew I didn't want to spend $58.30 because I knew I was going to screw the first one up. I always screw the first board up. I got the MOSFET wiring wrong. I realized I made a stupid mistake. I put the button in the wrong place, so it's like underneath the current sensor board. My one wire driver got broken. I had to switch to I2C. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why I knew the first board was going to be wrong, but I wanted to build it anyway. And so I started looking at other options, and that's when I started looking at Seed Studio. And there's a really cool website with a really great name called meetandnetworking.com. I don't know where they got that combo, but they did this analysis, and I thought it was kind of cool because they looked at it on basically as a three variable problem. They said either it's quantity, it's speed, or it's size. And it's kind of interesting. They basically looked out there and said, hey, I've looked at all the different board houses that are out there. The two that seem to be the most common and probably the two best that are out there are Seed Studio and Oshpark. So how do you tell which one? And so the first thing he did is said, well, just straight up, 10 boards, 10 days, which is kind of a premium service from Seed because they are in China. But 10 boards, 10 days by size. And what you see is once you get over a certain size, about 20 square centimeters, it's Seed all day. And then they said, well, what if I don't need 20? What if I just need 3? And that's my thing, because usually I just want to get the minimum size because I'm only going to need 1 or 2 of them. And there you can see Oshpark is a lot better choice, much more yellow, right? So because their minimum order quantity is 3 and Seed's minimum order quantity is 5, and because they're shipping from China, again, you're paying more of a premium for them to ship around the world. So you end up, with more of the territory owned by Oshpark. And finally, and this is my use case most often, which is minimum order, default speed by size. So I don't care how fast it gets here. I just want the minimum number of boards. And what I looked at was my board, 10 by 10. I'm well over in the green territory. I mean, so this thing that cost $58 from Oshpark ended up costing me a little over 20 from Seed Studio. It did take a solid month to arrive, though.
For 3? For
5. Actually, and then they threw in an extra, so I got 6. So I got 6 for $22 instead of $58, and I got it, but I got it in a month. And there's some other difference as well. Seed Studio's got a lot going on, and some of it's really cool. They make some really kind of cool Arduino-y sort of things. I think I sent you guys a notice. They're going to send me a free Link 1 because I entered that design contest and was selected for this round. And if you guys have interesting projects you might want to see, it's $100 in kit or a little bit more. Might as well just ask them if they want to send you one for free. They also do assembly, which is kind of cool. They do stencil work and stainless steel stencils for starting at $70. And they also have some premium services like laser cutting, and they'll do fancier things on the board like V-notch grooves and things like that. So it's really kind of a lot going on. But Oshpark's got some awesome, amazing customer service. I've been having some problems with reflowing a certain TI chip, and I thought maybe Oshpark was at fault. I pointed out the last board I got from them, and they came back with this big thing. They sent me his email. They looked at my Eagle files. They gave me some advice, and I thought that was very comprehensive and well thought out and very quick.
They predicted after the fact. They said, "Oh, looking at the asymmetry of these pads, the whole thing's going to turn counterclockwise," which is exactly what happened when we reflowed it. The whole chip turned to about the 10 p.m. position.
Yeah, it was actually very helpful, very quick, and then caused me to be able to redesign hopefully the board, and when I get it back, you will hopefully it'll reflow a little bit better.
You can put that under the document.
Oh yeah. And let me show you now. There is a difference also in the board itself. So I
you want to see, let's see these first.
Yeah, sure. So this Oshpark uses a finish, which is called ENIG, and I had always just kind of fine, whatever. And then, but then I actually went out and looked because they're different. And the ENIG finish, which stands for Electroless Nickel Immersion Gold, is actually really helpful if you need a surface that's very predictably flat, because you have fine pitched components, because you're doing ball grid array kind of things, and you're going to get a better result from that finish. It also is better in resisting corrosion, which is big for me because I'm putting a lot of these outdoors. And there's condensation, a couple of them got soaked in water, and I can say that the board itself hasn't corroded, even though a couple of them immersed in murky water with batteries and all sorts of stuff for a couple of days. Whereas the Seat Studio boards are this HASL, which basically is a solder layer is the finish, and it is something that supposed to wet better, maybe be a little easier to solder. Even though I found these pads to be much smaller and a little harder to solder than on the Oshpark boards. It might not be as good for boards with small pitch components, but it gets you a great price, and if you're just doing a few of these things, then it could be a way to go. And I think I'll pass these two around so you guys can see kind of what the two boards look like. The other thing about it is that if you want to do the work with boards that want to use leadless solder, apparently the Oshpark finish uses a certain thing called high TG-FR4, which has some meaning to some people, though not so much to me. But if you were looking at if you're looking at doing a leadless solder kind of a process, apparently it might be better suited for that. So here's what I ended up with at the end of it. It took about a month. I'll actually plug this thing in and have it doing a little automated test of my board over there. It uses a little motor to excite the accelerometer and then counts the number of pulses and lets me do simulate 25,000 bikes going over the thing, so I can make sure the battery's going to last a week. But you can see, the little place where the power comes in. There's my Pro Mini, my clock, my current sensor, display. Nice thing is I can run this thing without the computer. It can do the rundown tests, and it's actually worked out pretty well. So that was that's just what I want to share. Yeah.
So this isn't your next step for the trail monitor.
No, this is a device that I'm using when I build a trail monitor board and I want to test it for a 3-day, 4-day period. This is it's
a test jig.
It's a test jig, and it's supposed to be kind of general purpose. So I've got analog out and digital out. There's an SPI port. There's a place over here where I can test my power supply stuff. So I'm hoping that over time this kind of is a much neater, tidier thing than my old proto board. And the nice thing is, since I build all the sockets, I can pull this chip out and use it somewhere else, or the current sensor out and use it somewhere else later on. Yeah.
There are a couple of vendors, multi-purpose boards for breaking out things and adding other sensors.
Yeah.
Do you ever look into doing that and maybe going that route?
Now that I've done this and realized how badly my first attempt fell short of where I think that should be, I'm going to take a look. And then, the other thing I was going to offer is, anybody wants a couple of these boards? I got a few extra. I am going to respin it for version 2. So if anybody had any thoughts or comments or suggestions, I'd be open to that. Maybe on the follow on the breakout section afterwards. And I'll have it hooked up and running back there, so you can see how it puts my trail counter board through its paces. Yes.
If you wanted to pay a little bit extra to get the board back from seed faster, for your case,
right?
What would the difference be in terms of the default and the expedited?
Yeah, that's the difference between this one and this one. So
we're on the wrong video.
Oh gosh, sorry. Yeah, which I can see on my screen because I'm staring at it.
Could you give us that in dollars?
Yeah, so the expedited fee for Oshpark's steep. It's like $89 to expedite your order.
And how fast would that be?
How much?
How fast would that be?
It cuts it down to, I think, 7 to 10 days or something total time delivered.
Oh.
Yeah, and I don't know what for me, I got one order, they threw it in for free, and I got it, it was about 10 days. From when I uploaded the Eagle file to when I got, oh, the other thing is, if you use Eagle, the Ashpark experience is way better than the Seed Studio experience. So Seed will give you a thing that will let you export Gerber files from Eagle. So they give you a script, which is good. And then they'll suck in those Gerber files that they create. So you got to use their script, you upload it using their tool. But they don't give you the visualization that Ashpark does. And you can use third-party Gerber visualization tools, but you're not 100% sure that that visualization is actually the way that Seed Studio is going to create it, because they might visualize those Gerbers slightly differently. So I found that the process for actually ordering the board was a lot easier. And I'm sure if I do it enough times, it'll be fine. But it is easier on Ashpark, and you do have that comfort of seeing the board before you press buy, which you don't get with Seed. Yes.
What was the price difference to pull it in from a month to expedited
at Seed? I didn't do that, but I do have their thing. That's their. This is the page, and I think that's their premium. I don't know if that's an option in Fusion. Here, let me see. Yeah. No, they basically have the Fusion, which is the one I used, and then there's Premium, which is where you can send an urgent order, which will 24 to 48 hours, but then that takes the...
Yeah, I think some of them got it broke down on a giant table.
Yeah,
I'd have to go a little bit further
it.
down, it had the times. Well, stop.
Yep.
So lead time is 5 to 7, the other one is 3 to 12.
Yeah,
That's right.
that's right.
And then there's shipping, right?
And the shipping was pretty reasonable. And it was China Air, which doesn't do tracking. But then again, the Ashpark stuff doesn't usually track whole postage either with their free service. So, it was kind of like I got a China Air thing, and I kind of knew when it left China. And then 2-3 weeks went by, and then it showed up in the U.S. That might, yeah.
Another option that I use, or have been using for many, many years, is a company called Imagineering.com. They're located north of Chicago, and their turnaround time is guaranteed 5 days. And it's $100 for a board that has 10 square inches. And then it goes up as you go to higher, larger boards. But they have basically 2-day shipment. So I can place an order on Friday and have the printed circuit boards on the following Friday.
Okay, but then
But it costs you $100.
Yeah,
and that's something that I'm willing to pay for, because I don't want 30 days, nor does my customer want to spend 30 days waiting.
you probably don't screw up version 1 as badly as I do either.
I have been known. They've called me and said, "Mr. Evan, do you really want this whole thing?"
I've used them too, and the best thing you could do is if you have several projects, some going at a time, try to develop that.
Yeah, but they don't let you do that. Imagineering won't let you sneak 2 boards in one panel.
And the good news is these guys will, just because that was an interesting thing, they'll let you put up to 5 designs on a panel.
Well, that's good. That's good.
There it is, panelized boards. Maximum of 5 designs on
The
one
trick
board.
that I do with Imagineering, I've done this, is my serial ports, I'll tend to run traces
Yeah, I've done that.
between the boards.
Yeah, and don't put cut lines on the board.
But
No.
Ashpark has no limits on that. If you want to send,
Yeah, I understand,
A
but
design Oshpark
the idea is
has
that
the fast turnaround.
we're talking about fast turnaround.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
And that's
fast
up to 4
turnaround.
layers too, if I remember right.
And I don't have a wife, so she can't yell at me when I spend my
The
money.
pig fat guy. All right,
you can-
anything else?
You can get like
Fucking shot.
FedEx rocket shipping from Ashpark. So in combination with their,
Yeah. But I imagine by then your price is going closer to 100.
probably
Oh, yeah.
even worse.